Oh, and welcome to our webinar. We've got there in the end with the PowerPoints. It's
Yay.
there. Let me know when you want me to scroll through. It's not a problem at all. We can always go backwards and forwards if we need to. I will now go onto the slides and hand over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be speaking to your lovely community. Love what you're doing. Love this initiative. And today I want to share with you my proven three-step formula. So what I want to do today is show you why most hotel wellness concepts never make serious money. And when I say serious money, I mean specifically hold the weight as food and beverage, off food and beverage, rooms, be that third pillar. And what you can do to finally change that, let's say food and beverage and rooms taking the limelight and we're stuck at a very low level. Because once you understand what's actually going wrong, you stop wasting time on what looks like progress. And that is creating fancy treatment menus. Yes, I know my wellness leader friends, it hurts saying that, but I've been there, done that, fallen into the trap many times. We get caught in creating those beautiful treatment menus. We get sucked into new trends and we put our teams under endless trainings. And what I want us to do is stop wasting time on things like that look like progress and start focusing on what actually drives results. And here is what I know before I start the presentation is that most wellness leaders I meet feel trapped. So you've got big ideas, but you don't really have a big say. You are putting in huge hours, but you're not seeing the results of all the efforts you're putting in. You care deeply about your team, about wellness, about your guests, but you don't have the authority to make the changes you know are needed. And you're caught between being responsible for wellness performance, but never in charge of it, and you aren't the person who calls the shots. But yes, you're the person who takes the beating when the budget isn't met. So it's like this catch 22 situation we are stuck in. And if that's where you are, today you're in the right place. Today's webinar, today's masterclass has been designed for you. Next. So here's my promise to you. If you give me your full attention for the next 60 minutes or so, you will walk away with my three-step formula that shows you how to stop being bogged down in day-to-day operations and start building wellness concepts that actually perform on par with rooms and food and beverage. In other words, wellness offerings that contribute a third, that is 30% plus of total hotel revenue. So you are no longer being the lowest paid specialist leader in the room. You're no longer firefighting, people pleasing, or justifying your role, and no more wondering if it's you or the entire hospitality system and wellness within it that it's broken. So by the end of these 60 minutes, you'll walk away with a clear roadmap, that three-step proven formula to lead wellness like the asset it's meant to be and to finally become the leader you know you are. Next. If you're like most wellness leaders, you're probably next justifying every $100 expense while rooms and food and beverage get automatic approvals. Next. You're probably running endless sales and marketing promotions and discounted specials that are barely covering your spa and wellness operating costs, but instead boosting rooms revenue. Next. You're probably being excluded from meetings where decisions about the future of the hotel are being made and where wellness is a key differentiator. Next, what if I told you these struggles aren't because wellness can't be profitable? Next, or that your GM doesn't take wellness seriously? Next, or that wellness is always treated as the amenity, the marketing tool, or the service recovery department? Next, know that you, as a wellness leader, don't have the support you need. And finally, next, know that your team is not right. You don't have the right team, good facilities, or enough budget. Next, but that instead, they're actually signs you're running a wellness liability instead of an asset. Next, it is no secret that traditionally, wellness does not have a proven track record of stellar performance in hospitality. Many hoteliers report a meager 1 to 3% of total hotel revenue from their spas. And the spas are one of the fewer direct revenue generating wellness offerings. Next, in fact, in an internal survey I did last year, 97% of wellness leaders in those hotels reported that their departments generated less than 8% of total hotel revenue. And I'm going to say that again. 97% of wellness leaders in hotels reported that their departments generated less than 8% of total hotel revenue. Next. So, given this harsh reality, what if I told you that everything you believe about wellness success in hotels is wrong? Next, that working harder, having fancier facilities, chasing the latest trends, or running more discounted packages might actually be holding you and your wellness department back. In fact, here's another harsh truth for you. Next, the most successful wellness departments often have the simplest facilities. Next, and the most successful wellness leaders, those are the ones generating equal amounts of revenue as food and beverage and rooms. They typically work fewer hours than those stuck at less than 8%. Next. So let's be honest with ourselves. And I'm going to ask you a question. Is this your reality? Next. Picture this. It's 9 p.m. on a Friday. You're still at work, handling another guest complaint and trying to find cover for a shift. Your friends meet up for dinner started 2 hours ago, and you don't even think you're going to feel like meeting up for drinks later. And now you just come across an email from your GM asking you for next month's sales and marketing plan so she can present it to owners first thing on Monday. And you're wondering, is this what the next 10 years of my career will look like? Next. But here's what makes today, this very moment where Sarah's asked me to speak to you lovely members, this today, this very moment, what makes it different is that it's not just another day in wellness leadership. This is the exact moment where you can change your status quo. Next. But before I show you how to change your reality, let me share why I am so passionate about helping wellness leaders transform their departments and careers. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sonal Uberoi. I'm the founder of Spa Balance and author of The Wellness Asset. But my journey didn't start in wellness. I actually began my career as a financial analyst at Goldman Sachs. Yes, the investment bank. You would never think wellness, right? I spent, when I was in Goldman Sachs, years and years analyzing very complex numbers, navigating Excel sheets, and working with major clients. But something was always missing. I had the best career, wonderful salary, the social status that people died for way back then, but I was missing the purpose. So that is when I made a life changing decision to follow my passion for wellness. Now, here's what I thought. Little arrogant Sonal way back then, over 20 years ago. With my finance background and my ability to think strategically, running a wellness department will be easy. Oh boy, so wrong. I was so wrong. Over the last 2 decades, I've managed over 40 projects, worked across 21 countries, partnered with brands like Four Seasons, Accor, and Six Senses. But more importantly, in these 2 decades, I have made every mistake possible and I have fallen flat on my face on a number of occasions. So I have been that person who has built beautiful facilities that sat empty. I have hired ninjas who couldn't deliver. I have created luxury, amazing concepts that literally hemorrhaged money. And each of these failures taught me something important. And on that mountain of failures today, I run the success of my boutique consultancy here in Madrid, specializing in creating profitable wellness concepts for luxury and lifestyle hotels. Next. And today, I am here because I know firsthand the frustration of having a vision but limited support, the challenge of seeing potential but lacking resources, and the struggle of believing in wellness but fighting to prove its value. And more importantly, I know how to transform these challenges into opportunities. Next. So here's what I've learned being in the industry for over 20 years. Most spa and wellness managers are working really hard. Next. But they're killing themselves for something the hotel business doesn't truly value. Next. Because you, my wellness leader friend, were honed to manage a beautiful spa. So your job was to create schedules, deliver sensory wellness experience, be that beautiful department, foot rituals, quality oils, the whole 9 yards. Next, but you were not taught how to build a profitable wellness business. So I recently wrote an article where wellness is the beauty and food and beverage and rooms are the brains. That is how we have been honed. And next, and this particular mindset is what keeps so many talented spa and wellness leaders spinning their wheels. So you're burned out, overworked, and underpaid. Next. In fact, I found there are really 3 types of wellness leaders. 1, those who get ignored. 2, those who get invited occasionally. And 3, those who shape the future. So, which one do you identify with, or who do you resonate with? I'm not sure if there is a chat function here. Drop it in the chat if it's 1, those who get ignored, 2, those who get invited, or 3, those who shape the future. And while you are either thinking silently or dropping your comments in the chat section, I can tell you I have been every single 3 of them. I have been the person who has been ignored, and I assure you, I did not enjoy it. I have and also continue to be the person who is invited. And I have very, very consciously become the person who shapes the future of this industry because that is what I want. That is what I want for our future generation. So really think which category you are in and whether you are kind of oscillating between one and the other. Because next, here is what I've seen the difference between the category of ignored, invited, and shaping the future. Next, it's not more certifications. Next, it's not even years of experience and knowledge. Next, it's not even being a finance ninja or a wellness guru. Next, it's whether you know how to create a true wellness asset. And to do that, you need a different approach. Next, you don't need the biggest budget, the fanciest facilities, the most expensive treatments. This is what we were taught. That's what we've been honed to think. Bling is better. And that is what keeps us in this kind of victim mindset where we don't think we can own the future within or get our seat at the hotel's big table. And when in fact, what you really need all lies within your power. And that is a new way to think. You need to position wellness as an offering that is an asset. And how do you do that? You do it through my 3-step formula. Next, but before I dive into my 3-step formula, let's get on the same page on what an asset means, because I have seen that word wellness asset now being used so often and so lightly all the time, and particularly after I wrote my book. And it's very important to get the definition right because I chose that word very intentionally. So here's my definition of it. An asset is something valuable, tangible or intangible that contributes positively to achieving a goal. Now I'm going to say that again. An asset is something that has both tangible. So if we want to translate the word tangible, something that's measurable, and intangible, something that's not that easily measurable, value. And the key here is that contributes positively to achieving a goal. And by the end of this masterclass, you understand why achieving a goal is the key to turning wellness into a measurable and meaningful contributor to your hotel's success. Successful wellness leaders have one thing in common. They've learned how to leverage their asset, the tangible and intangible value that contributes positively to achieving a goal strategically. And today I'll show you how to do that with my 3-step formula next. And when you understand how to position wellness as an asset, you'll shift from being in the state of operational chaos to becoming and to having this strategic clarity. You will go from the state of constantly employing short-term fixes to putting out fires to creating sustainable results. And you'll also stop being exhausted by doing all the firefighting to finally owning your seat at the hotel's big table. Next, and as a result of that shift, you will go from being this wellness director, managing daily operations, to stepping into the role of a wellness strategist who earns more than 100K and drives real impact. Next. So the journey from overlooked wellness manager to strategic leader happens in 3 essential steps. Next. 1, speak. You speak the language your GM actually listens to. And when you speak that language, this gets you attention, making you visible when you've been invisible. Next. Once you have their attention, you build with intention. So you're creating wellness offerings that align with the hotel's goals, and that is what earns their trust. Next. And when that trust is established, you lead without permission. You take your rightful seat at the table and you gain the influence, impact, and recognition you deserve, including a pay that matches your value. Next. So let's dive into my 3-step formula next. Step 1, speak. Learn the language your GM actually listens to, because this is what gets you attention. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if your GM or your hotelier colleagues don't understand them, they'll never go anywhere. Next. Now, those of you watching me, do you feel your GM, your hotelier colleagues don't understand wellness or what you do? Next, are your ideas always getting ignored? How many times have you shared an idea you knew would make a difference, but then got a polite nod or we'll see? Next, the problem isn't your idea. It's the language. So let me explain. So I'm going to probably butcher this. So let's say they're two friends, two travelers, Tom and Jerry, just to think of a few words. And Tom and Jerry are going to Japan. It's their dream kind of destination. And 3 months before their visit to Japan, their whole trip that they want to go, Tom is the one who's learning a few polite words in Japanese. Hello, thank you, the train station, can I have a beer. And the other, Jerry, what he does is instead he just says, now what's the point? I have Google Translate and ChatGPT. I don't need to learn any Japanese words. Now, guess who, when they get to Japan, has the better trip? Tom or Jerry? Tom, the one who gets the warm smiles, helpful locals, even the free drink. Whereas Jerry gets lost, misunderstood, frustrated because he can't express himself, and sometimes even just dismissed. So both Tom and Jerry had the same goal, to have an amazing trip in Japan, to learn the local culture, to create truly memorable moments like, wow, we've been to Japan. However, only Tom made the effort to speak the language. Next, most wellness leaders speak spa. Like Jerry, they only speak English. But GMs, like the locals in Japan, speak Japanese. They think in GM language, RevPAR, occupancy, ADR, drop through rates, RGI. If you're not speaking their language, your best ideas will keep getting lost in translation. So it's not about being a finance ninja or a sales whiz, a sales ninja also. It's about showing you understand what matters to them. And this is how you fix that. Next. First, think in business outcomes. If you want to speak a language that your GMs listen to, speak in business outcomes. So, what problem is keeping the GM, the owner, whoever that hotelier colleague is? What is keeping them up at night? If you can show how wellness impacts whatever is on their mind, revenues, booking, guest satisfaction, employee well-being, community well-being, planetary well-being, your GM will listen to you in a different way. Next, 2, be specific and use data. So, what impact is that problem having on revenue, profitability, employee well being, guest satisfaction, whatever is keeping that GM up at night? And keep it clear, keep it specific, and use numbers when you can. Next, in 3, Once you know what's keeping them up at night, and when you know how, the next step is position wellness as the solution. So, how are you going to use wellness to fix the problem? You know what's keeping them up at night. You know the impact it's having on them. Now, position wellness as the solution. So, how's wellness going to fix the problem? Next. So, let's take, I think, I've given you 3 points just to kind of bring it home. Let me give the example of Anna. So she is a real student of mine who I'm mentoring, and but I've changed her names and changed a few things. But the gist of what I'm saying is it maintains. It's the same. So Anna is a very seasoned wellness director, and she has over 10 years of experience. And she took over a 10 treatment room spa that hadn't had a wellness leader in 9 months. So, operations, as you can imagine, were a mess. But she jumped in headfirst right into the deep end. And the biggest issue her spa was facing was that the beauty department was consistently 40% under budget. So every month in every finance meeting, her director of finance brought it up. Anna, you're 40% under budget in beauty. And every time she got the same lack of confidence look from her dear director of finance. And she also mentioned that he would sit and roll his eyes when he heard her speak. Because what she said over and over was this: we're not hitting budget because I don't have enough therapists. And while it felt true, and this is something we can all resonate to, it wasn't specific. It wasn't backed by numbers. And it didn't connect to what her director of finance actually cared about. That problem that was keeping him up at night and having to justify to his owners. And the pressure was closing that 40% of gap. Because if wellness didn't do it, guess what? Food and beverage and rooms would have to pick up the slack. And the truth is, her team didn't have enough therapists who could deliver one of the spa's top performing packages. They simply weren't trained. And she knew it deep down that that was the case, but she couldn't prove it. But instead of making a business case, she made it a complaint. And that is what tuned her director of finance out. Now, compare her response to this one next. Our best selling package generates €400 per guest. We're turning away 12 guests per week due to therapist shortages. That's a projected loss of €4,800 a week. If we upskill 3 more team members, we can close this gap in under 60 days. Can you see how the same problem? We don't have enough therapists who are trained to do certain treatments. Same problem, just packaged in a different way. The message is completely different. And that's the difference between speaking spa and speaking business. Tom speaking 1 or 2, 3 words of Japanese, and Jerry trying to rely on Google Translate and ChatGPT. Next. So let's actually look into why that second version landed better. Here's why, and this is something I learned way back in my Goldman Sachs days. Because it followed a simple and powerful structure. Here's the problem, here's the impact, here's my plan to fix it. I remember, when we were in Goldman Sachs, we had, each team of us, we were responsible for a lot more money than hotels even make. And of course, we used to make mistakes. And of course, money or, it's all speculation, and a fund would work or it wouldn't work. But guess what? When you go to a shareholder and owner, you just can't say, oh, it's just bad luck. It doesn't work that way. And my leader there said, always think, here's a problem, here's the impact, here's my plan to fix it. So if a fund wasn't working, this is the problem, this is the impact it's having, and this is how we're going to fix it. So When you speak this way to your GM, they not only hear you, they understand you. They pay attention to you. They start seeing you as someone who gets it. And I've used this simple framework all my years in this industry, and it's rare that a GM is not taking me seriously. So let's look at Anna's situation and let's look at her problem. Let's take it through this 3-step formula. And while I'm doing that, I want you to pick up one thing that is not landing well with either your director of finance, your sales of marketing, your GM, your owner, whoever's being the pain. Go into here's the problem. Just facts, no emotions. The spa was 40% below budget. That meant that rooms and food and beverage had to absorb the shortfall to hit the hotel's profit and loss. And Anna created a bestseller package that wasn't really improving any budget. So that gap, 40%, wasn't being closed. So these are the facts that we could actually extrapolate. The impact. She realized the real issue that she didn't have enough therapists to meet the demand. So trained therapists, I'd say. So she had the right number, but they weren't trained on the one treatment that was selling really well. But she hadn't been tracking the revenue she was losing. So I told her, measure that impact. And she was thinking, oh my God, I have to do this for another month before sitting with the director of finance. I was like, yes, this is what you're going to do. Start tracking that number. Get your team to do that. And yes, it might take a week of making them, every day write that down until they actually do. And then when she goes with the plan, this is what she did. She showed her director of finance how much business they were turning away and built the case to add therapist support strategically. So she got new therapists also during peak periods. So this is what speaking business sounds like. You're not staying up at the surface. You're not being emotional. You're getting specific, you're getting strategic, and you're grounded in outcomes. And when you speak in this language, you do not get dismissed anymore. Instead, you start being included in conversations. Next. So, next time you go into a meeting and feel that your GM doesn't understand wellness or what you do, it's important to know that you, as my wellness leader friend, my spa manager, you're not being ignored and you are not being misunderstood. Can you see how just a few words spoken in their language opens doors? And this is what happens when you speak your GM's language. So you don't need to sound like a finance ninja. You don't need to sound like a sales whiz. You don't need to be anything you are not. It's just a question of connecting what you know deep down to what they actually care about. And when you do that, you stop being seen as someone who's passionate about wellness and you start being seen as someone who drives results. So you're not just that wellness director. You're a translator between well-being and business value. And that is what gets you attention. Next. Now, we've just seen how speaking your GM's language makes you grab their attention. Once you've grabbed their attention, the next step is to earn their trust. And you do that through build. Next. So, getting your GM's or your hoteliers' colleagues' attention is step one. But once they are watching, the question becomes, can I trust this person to actually deliver what they're promising? And this is where many wellness leaders fall short. And it has nothing to do with your talent, but everything to do with how you build wellness like a business. Next. So I have seen it and I've also lived it. So when we are new to a job, we're new to a position, we've been headhunted, maybe we've been invited to take on a lovely spa at the beginning. You get along with everyone. You're the cat's meow or the dog's bollocks. Everything clicks. Your GM supports you. The director of finance says yes to everything you ask them. You feel backed. And then suddenly, once the honeymoon phase ends, something shifts. Next, the GM you love maybe leaves, budgets tighten, confidence fades. So, what do you do as this knee jerk reaction? You do what any good wellness leader does, you work harder. So you add more offers, you change the treatment menu, you schedule in more training, you work longer hours, and you do every single thing you were told to do by the book. But the results still don't come. And meetings get more tense, and suddenly no one's even listening to you anymore. Next, because you quickly realize that doing more isn't the answer. More doesn't mean better. More actually often just means messier. Next. So imagine trying to put together a puzzle. You have no picture on the box, so someone hands you this bag full of puzzle pieces, and half of them are from another puzzle. That is what most wellness strategies look like to GMs. They're handed this bag full of puzzles, pieces of puzzles, and they can't see what you're building. And when they can't see what you're doing and what you're building, what's the end result? They don't trust that it's going to go anywhere. But when you show up with the full picture, so the bag with the picture, that is when you actually begin to get their trust. Next. So, how do you stop reacting and start building trust? We know it's not about doing more, it's about knowing what you're really building. And you do that in 3 shifts. Next. First, you start with direction, not tactics. So you start with the goal, then choose the action. So let's go back to Anna's case. When Anna inherited that department, she did all the things right, at least on paper. She talked to the team. She discovered that only 2 out of 8 petitions were trained across the full menu. And she reached out to product brands and immediately scheduled training. So this is what all of us do. And her heart was in the right place. So she acted fast, she acted thoughtful, but here's what she missed. Her director of finance didn't care about technician skill gaps. The only thing he cared about was the budget gap. And the training, it was taking the therapists off the floor. So it was reducing treatment capacity, albeit temporarily, which meant that they continued to be 40% under budget. So the lesson here is start with the goal. Is the goal to upskill your team or to close the 40% revenue gap? We might think it's to upskill our team, but the reality is that goal is as simple as it is, close that 40% gap. So once you have started with the goal, then you choose the action that solves that problem. And you do that fast. Because here's the thing, my wellness leader friends, training isn't strategy. It's a tool. And tools only work if they're pointed at the right target. So strategy means knowing where you are going before you decide how to get there. It's like when you sit in your car and you want to go to a destination, you don't start figuring the how before you figure out the destination. Like in Google Maps, I would put the destination first, and then I'm showed 3 or 4, 5, 6 ways to get there. And that's the same thing you need to do. Mark the destination, that goal, and then you choose what's the most feasible way to get there. Are we all good? I'm here like reading my notes, all concentrated. Just wanted to see, is there a hands up, thumbs up? Excellent, 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 excellent. So I just hope there's not a lot of background noise here. But just bear with me 1 minute. Just 1 second here. Okay, let me share. Okay. Next. So once we've got our goal clear, the next step is to track progress. So not just data. So it's not about tracking everything. It's about tracking what moves the business forward. And this is something the spa industry is so notorious about. And I've been guilty as charged. Many times I have actually created a whole spa KPI kit, got everyone to fill out everything. And then I thought, oh my God, what are these KPIs? And I've had regional and global heads ask me for this list of KPIs and no one actually knowing what these KPIs stand for, no one asking us, what are we doing to improve them? Or sometimes we're asked to benchmark spas in Asia with spas in the United States. It's like comparing apples with pears, instead of tracking what actually moves the business forward. And Anna, like all of us, was measuring things, but she wasn't measuring the right things. So she was tracking the number of hours they were training. She was tracking how many therapists could actually do certain treatments. She's also actually measuring employee well-being, her therapist well-being, and that to the director of finance, he didn't really care because the business needed to know which services drove the most revenue and how many guests were being turned away in the last month, and what is the fastest path to closing that gap and quick. So she had data, lots of data, but she didn't have the direction. Next. Once you are progressing, you're actually tracking progress. The next stage is to build an ecosystem. So, not just a list of services. So, your treatment menu isn't a strategy, it's a menu. That list of treatments is a menu. Scattered services, and I'm not saying your services are scattered, but putting together your standard services does not build trust. Systems do. And in Anna's case, Anna was doing everything she could to fix the gap. So she wasn't only just scheduling the training to get all her therapists trained, she was also at the same time reinventing the menu. So a new ritual for summer, a signature scrub that was designed by her therapists, a nutrition workshop that she created with the director of food and beverage, all the while training all her therapists on everything all at once. So you can imagine how full on her energy was and her teams. And her intention was very clear. She wanted her team to be happy and she wanted wellness to do well. But the end result? To her, the director of finance, to her director of finance, all these initiatives just looked like chaos. So there was no strategy, there was no structure, there was no hierarchy of priorities. So he just saw more stuff, more things she was doing. And these things and initiatives were costing the hotel more. And the 40% gap in budget was still being picked up by rooms and food and beverage. Next. So here's what a director of finance kept hearing. Not all therapists can do every treatment. So we are waiting on training before revenue improves. Now, you say this, not all my therapists can do every treatment. So we're waiting for training before revenue improves. You say this to a wellness person. This sounds reasonable, but it doesn't solve the problem. It sounds to the ears of the director of finance like delay, someone who doesn't know what they're doing. There is no plan. Next. Now, here is what she could have said. We're focusing training on our top 3 revenue drivers. If we get everyone up to speed on just those, we can close the gap in under 8 months. The rest can wait. Now, when she speaks like that, she sounds like someone who is not reacting, but someone who is designing. And that is what earns trust. So, this is what ecosystem thinking looks like. Instead of training on everything, instead of launching 3 new treatments in 3 months, Anna could have done this. First, identify the top 3 revenue drivers. 2, and this is so important, guys, this is the low hanging fruit, the quick wins. Build spin off packages around those services. And then once you've done that, focus training, marketing, and all resources you can think of just on that. So let me just kind of put that in more English terms instead of Sonal terms, right? Let's say your top 3 revenue drivers was your 90-minute signature treatment, head to toe. Then you had a facial and you had another, let's say, body scrub treatment that happened to be, or your body wrap treatment that had to be a top 3 revenue driver. So you're just looking at stats. If that's what you know your customers are buying, either because they like that, or your team likes doing it, or that your team likes selling it, let's not fight that. Build spin off packages. So you could mix the signature treatment with the facial, or the wrap with the facial, and just also spin off only half an hour treatments. So you know your team. If they can do the full treatment top to toe, they definitely can do bits of that. Create packages, call them lovely things, and then focus all your training, all your marketing, all your resources on just those 3 revenue drivers. Do not reinvent the wheel, particularly when you're in crisis stage. And when you do that, you're not just managing a spa with a list of random services. You're being the architect of an ecosystem. And that is what your GM and director of finance can believe in, because they're not saying, oh, let me retrain my team. Like, no, these are your key revenue drivers. And you know what? We are going to sell people what they want to buy. We're not going to try to sell a carnivore, a vegan diet. That's not going to work. Next. So when you see the full picture, you know what to build, in what order, and why. So when you know the goal, it's very easy to find a way to get there. And then you have to make sure that you're actually getting to the goal. That is when you're tracking your progress. And then to get there, make sure you're creating an ecosystem, not a list. And when you actually know what to build, in what order, and why, you stop reacting and you start designing. And your concept finally makes sense to your GM, your team, and to you. Next, can you see how, when the full picture, when you have that full picture, every decision gets easier? You're not guessing any longer. And more importantly, you're not trying to fix everything at once, because you know exactly what matters now and what can wait. And you stop offering wellness as a list of services. Instead, you are building a system that runs with or without you. And that is the difference between being just busy and killing yourself and being trusted, between looking creative and being seen as strategic, between being seen as a manager of an amenity department, that 1 to 3% earner, and being seen as a leader of a strategic business driver, 30% and above. Can you see how building wellness like a business starts by knowing exactly what you're building, the picture of the puzzle? And when you know what you're building, you can actually deliver the results your GM is looking for. And when you deliver results, that is when you earn their trust, not by just doing more for the sake of doing more. Next. So Now you've grabbed your GM's attention by speaking your GM's language. You've earned their trust with a clear plan because you know exactly what you're building and why. There's only one thing left to do, and that's lead next. So, leading is about taking your seat without asking for permission. This is what gives you influence. And also, here is where most wellness leaders hesitate. You wait for buy in, you wait for permission, you wait for someone to say, now you're ready. But guess what? Leadership doesn't work like that. Next. There's a story I love, and I'm borrowing this, and I'm going to butcher it completely, but you will get the gist of it. So there was this woman who used to pray every night because she wanted to win the lottery. So she would sit every night, light all the candles, say her affirmations, staying positive, visualizations, manifestations, journaling, and she would do that day and day after day after day after for months on end. And every day she saw that nothing happened until one night, in sheer and utter frustration, she cried out, "Why won't you let me win?" And the voice above replied, "I'm trying to help you, but you've got to meet me halfway. You've got to buy a ticket." Now, that is what leadership looks like. You can't just want change. You can't just want that $1 million lottery. You have to step into it before anyone else sees it. Next. So, if you want influence, hey, here's how you lead wellness from the front. You only need three things. Next. One, act with conviction, not consensus. And I'm going to say that again. Act with conviction, not consensus, because conviction leads, consensus follows. And most of us tend to be women in our industry. So we follow. Rarely do we take that initiative to lead because we think others should lead us. But this is what it looks like when you don't trust your own idea enough to lead it. Now, this is a real life example of one of my female wellness directors here in Spain. She had a brilliant idea. She wanted to boost residual income. It doesn't matter where it came from, but she wanted to boost hotels' revenue without hiring more staff or without incurring any costs. And what she did was she managed to speak to one of her product brands, and she got 35 VIP skin sets on consignment. Now, in Spain, you don't get anything on consignment. And this hotel was very small. It was only 55 rooms, out of which the superior category, I think, were around 13 rooms. Not that many, but she managed to get 35 VIP skin kits that she could sell at 56 euros each. And her plan was to include them in the superior room character in that category. So she didn't need any extra therapists, no new staff, and no new costs, just added value and revenue. She had that brilliant idea. But then guess what she does? She hesitates. She's like, "Oh, Sonal, I'm worried, will housekeeping be okay with adding one more thing? If, will the director of rooms approve of what I'm doing? Would even sales want to promote it on the website as an add-on?" So here's what she did. She went and changed the plan. So instead of integrating it with rooms, she left the kits in the spa. So she thought that her therapists would sell them after the treatments. The majority of them were massages. Guess what the end result was? Not a single kit sold. So when you wait for consensus, you dilute the very thing that made your idea powerful. So let me be clear about one thing. When I say lead with conviction and not consensus, conviction doesn't mean being reckless or bulldozing your ideas or being inconsiderate. It means having a clear case and moving forward while others catch up with you. So you don't ask, do you think this will work? Show them why it will. Next. Second, rally cross departmental support. A lot of wellness leaders think that leading confidently and competently means doing it all yourself. That if you bring in other departments, it somehow weakens your authority. But here's the truth: real leaders don't work alone, they build alignment. And getting others on board isn't giving up the power. I'm not sure if you've got my PDF right. Yeah, it's still a few down. Yeah, there we are. Um, um, so real, it's like what I was saying earlier on, rally that cross-departmental support, because real leaders don't work alone. They build alignment. And getting your other leaders on board isn't giving up your power. It's proving you know where you're going and that you can take people with you. So wellness isn't in silos. You know, it touches sales, it touches rooms, it touches food and beverage, people and culture. So if you're trying to lead wellness in isolation, it's always going to feel like a struggle. And I learned this very early on in my career. I remember 20 years ago when I started, the typical spa and rooms package was built where spa would only get a small portion of revenue and rooms would get the whole part. And I remember thinking, no, this is not going to happen. I used to say no continuously to sales and revenue teams that I'm not only going to get 40% of the split here, because in my mind, I didn't want my department to be devalued. And years later, 20 years later, very different reality. I was far more mature, far more experience under my belt, completely different property. And the same thing happened. But this time, obviously, I was mature. I had a good relationship with the director of sales and the director of finance. And they both sat me down. And I mean, clearly, they weren't asking for my support. But what they did do was they were showing me the plan and they shared the numbers. They had explained how occupancy during the week had fallen and that creating this package would increase hotel occupancy. As a result, it would also increase spa footfall and drive food and beverage spend. And this package on this own for a period of 3 months was actually going to boost hotel revenue by 10%. And what was making that happen possible was wellness. And that is when I saw how wellness could be a driver, not just a department. And more importantly, I stopped guarding my revenue, like my wellness revenue, like it was mine alone. And I started treating it like the part of a bigger picture. So the lesson here, the one that I learned, and I hope, this is something I can send out to you. You don't lose power when you collaborate, you actually gain momentum. And when sales wins, rooms wins, and so there's food and beverage and wellness. So stop trying to lead wellness by yourself. Make your success everyone else's. Next, lastly, create a wellness culture, not just a department. So you're not building a spa menu, you're building a movement. So wellness lives in how your team feels and how your guests live truly cherishable moments, in how your brand shows up in the world. So if you want to lead wellness, lead it at every level: guest, team, brand. Don't wait for the company to take wellness serious. So build that culture that makes it possible, absolutely impossible, for wellness not to be taken seriously. Next, can you see how different it feels when you stop waiting and start leading? When you speak with clarity, when you build with purpose, when you act with conviction. That's when people stop seeing you as the spa manager and they start seeing you as a strategic force. So influence isn't handed to you. You claim it by stepping up before the title, before the budget, before the full plan. You don't wait to lead. You buy the ticket, you step up, and you lead. I didn't write the book, The Wellness Asset, waiting for someone's permission. I just went and wrote it. And I claimed the word asset because wellness is precisely that. I didn't wait for anyone else to tell me, yes, you can use that word. So you all have the permission you need to make wellness that asset, whatever that means to you. Next. So to recap and to now close, you now know how to speak so your GM listens. So you can grab their attention without begging for it. Two, you know how to build with strategy. So not just raw effort. You know how to earn trust strategically. And lastly, you know how to lead with that permission. And this is what gives you influence. And together, those three moves position wellness as a real business asset. Next. So you have the mindset, you have the map, and you have the message. But here's the truth, this is where most people stop because knowing what to do is only one step, but doing it consistently, confidently, and in a way that creates real change, that's the hard part. Because even with all of this, with me over an hour ranting, it's easy to fall back into old habits, to get pulled into the daily grind of operations, to get seduced by the latest trend, to lose sight of the bigger picture. Next, what I want you to do right now is to decide, are you done being the lowest paid specialist leader? Are you done trying to prove your value? Are you done patching things together? Are you ready to stop guessing and start building with structure, support, and strategy? Because you just don't want to talk about wellness as an asset. You actually want to create one. You want to make an impact. You want to have a voice in the industry. You want to shape the future of wellness because deep down, you know you can. Next. And if that is what you want to do, take a snapshot of this simple screen, the three-step formula: speak, grab attention, build, earn trust, lead, gain that influence. And you have those 9 steps, 3 under each of them, to actually help anchor you when you feel lost and when you get lost and when you feel kind of alone. This is that kind of map, that gyroscope, that compass that will keep you on track. Next. And if you want to learn more about how my 3-step formulas, speak, build, lead, you can head over to my website and learn more about my Wellness Academy program. Or you can email me, or better still, leave a comment in the community section over here at Spa Well, and I'll be glad to comment and answer any questions. So that's me.
Sonal, that was so interesting. Absolutely. Like, I think we often think you're saying, like, with the finance part of it, knowing about finance is the way to make yourself sort of have that seat at the table, as you put it. But actually, you could know the numbers, but if you're not speaking the speak or building something or being clear in what you're doing, then you're not really showing yourself off, are you? You're not giving people the confidence that you do know.
Absolutely. And it's a question of, you don't need to be that finance ninja. You know, I'm a finance ninja, and I can assure you, I've seen many finance ninjas and they failed miserably. Even we've seen the best people who are like, and, you know, within wellness gurus within their own kind of specialist field. They're amazing at what they do, but they still don't get wellness to be that successful business. So the trick here, the way I see it, is deep down, we all know what's right for a spa. We know what we want. We know what our industry, we know the impact we are made. We know our superpowers. There's no doubt. It's just bridging that
Yeah.
with what the other person wants. speak their language the way, or a language they listen to. So you don't need to lose your kind of um, integrity, authenticity. Just speak in a language that they listen. Then you build knowing their goal. It's so important to know that wellness is a transverse industry, which is beautiful when you're talking about wellness and hospitality. We are a solution. You physically cannot milk rooms and food and beverage anymore. You know,
Mm,
rooms and food and beverage just are a done deal. We wellness people, I'm not being arrogant, we're the people who are going to make the huge difference, not only in hospitality. We're being headhunted across the globe for many other companies because wellness is that asset. We contribute positively to achieving a bigger goal. We are that missing piece in this era where people want purpose led businesses. So it's not business and money just for the sake of money.
mhm.
And nor is it this, we're not creating something that's not commercially sustainable. It clearly needs to make money, but we're not going to do that at any old cost. We're showing them a new way of doing business. That knowledge we already have. It's
Yeah.
just bridging it to what they want. And, you know, that's where you get that kind of that asset. You move forward. You lead without asking for permission. You know it and they'll eventually see it. Just leading, don't ask for permission.
I once got asked that in a job interview. It's funny you say that. I once got asked, do you ask permission or lead? And I was like, I don't often ask for permission, I'm afraid. And I got the job.
See? That's what they want. I mean, you don't want someone to ask you permission to do, I don't know, clean the sauna, for example. You just want them to go ahead and do it, right? Same. I mean, I just used a very random example, but it's the same.
Yeah, it is. And I think once you've got that confidence and you feel that you can talk the right language, use the right terms, you get that confidence and you can almost be a little bit cheeky like that. You can kind of just say, well, I'm going to do this because I do know what I'm doing and I don't have, you don't need, they're not waiting for me to talk to them about it. I can do it.
And you know what? Wellness will always know more than anyone else. They're not going to know better than us about our industry.
No.
So whatever what they're likely to take it is not going to work, you know. So we might as well go and lead.
I've met a few who try.
Yes.